Answer this honestly, when's the last time you actually felt calm? Not pretended to be fine. Not pushed it down so no one would ask questions. Actually calm. If you had to pause and think about it, that should tell you something. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped feeling peace, and started performing it. You learned to answer, "I'm good," before the question even finished. You learned to laugh on cue, to nod like everything's fine, to keep your voice steady even when your mind is anything but. And here's the part nobody tells you, that's not strength. That's a skill you built out of survival. You trained yourself to look okay because at some point, being honest about how you really felt wasn't safe, wasn't welcomed, or simply wasn't heard. So you adapted. You got good at it. So good, that even you started believing the mask was your actual face. But underneath that calm exterior, there's a version of you that's exhausted. Tired of holding it together for everyone else. Tired of being the strong one when no one ever asks if the strong one is breaking too. If any part of what I just said made your chest tighten a little, stay with me. Because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why you learned to hide, and exactly what it's going to take to finally stop performing, and start actually healing. There was a moment, you probably don't even remember it, when you learned that showing your real feelings came with a cost. Maybe someone got frustrated when you cried. Maybe someone told you to toughen up before you even understood what that meant. So you did what every human does to survive an environment that doesn't feel safe, you adapted. You learned that being agreeable was safer than being honest. You learned that silence caused less damage than the truth. And slowly, without ever deciding to, you built a version of yourself made almost entirely of other people's comfort. You became fluent in reading a room before you even learned to read your own heart. You became the peacekeeper, the listener, the one who always seemed to have it together. But nobody ever asked what that cost you. Nobody saw the nights you replayed conversations, wondering if you said too much or too little. Nobody saw the anxiety humming quietly beneath your steady voice, your composed face, your reliable presence. You didn't choose to become this skilled at hiding. You were trained by every moment your real emotions felt like too much for the people around you. And somewhere in that training, calm stopped being something you felt, it became something you performed. That performance became so consistent, so convincing, that even the people closest to you have no idea what's actually happening underneath. And if you're honest with yourself right now, neither do you, not completely. Here's something that might be hard to hear, the calm you show the world isn't lying to everyone else. It's lying to you first. Every time you say, "I'm fine," when you're not just managing someone else's comfort, you're rehearsing a story you've started to believe yourself. Think about how many times you've swallowed a feeling because voicing it felt inconvenient. Think about how many times you smiled through something that was quietly breaking you, because the moment didn't feel like the right one to be honest. There's never a right moment when you've trained yourself to disappear. This is the quiet tragedy of being the strong one. People stop checking on you, not because they don't care, but because you've convinced them there's nothing to check on. You built the walls so well that even concern can't find its way in anymore. And the exhausting part isn't the hiding itself, it's the loneliness that grows underneath it. Because the version of you that everyone knows, loves, and relies on isn't entirely real. And somewhere inside, you know it. You feel the distance between who you are and who you present. That distance is where anxiety lives. Not in the big dramatic moments, but in the small daily gap between your real feelings and your rehearsed responses. And the longer that gap stays open, the harder it becomes to remember which version of you is actually true. Somewhere along the way, you convinced yourself that needing help was a weakness. That asking for support meant you'd failed at handling life on your own. So instead of reaching out, you learned to carry everything quietly, telling yourself it was easier this way. But easier isn't the same as sustainable. You can hold your breath for a while and call it breathing normally. You can clench your jaw for years and call it being fine. Eventually, your body starts keeping score even when your mind refuses to admit anything is wrong. That's why you feel tired even after resting. That's why your chest tightens for no clear reason. That's why some nights, calm never actually arrives, you just run out of energy to keep performing it, and exhaustion takes its place instead. You've mistaken numbness for peace for so long that you forgot they aren't the same thing. Peace doesn't feel like nothing. Peace doesn't feel hollow. Real peace has warmth in it, and if you can't remember the last time you felt that warmth, that absence is trying to tell you something. This isn't about blaming yourself for surviving the way you knew how. You did what you had to do with the tools you were given. But surviving and living were never meant to be the same thing, and somewhere inside, you already know you deserve more than just getting through the day. The mask you built was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to protect a version of you that didn't yet have the strength to be vulnerable. But that version of you has grown. And it's time the mask finally learns that too. You are allowed to stop performing. You are allowed to let people see the parts of you that aren't perfectly composed. That isn't weakness, that's the beginning of finally being real again. There's a difference between the moment you started hiding and the moment you decided that hiding was just who you are. That second moment is the dangerous one. Because once you stop seeing the mask as a mask, you stop looking for a way to take it off. You start to believe this exhaustion is normal. You start to believe everyone feels this disconnected, this tired, this quietly overwhelmed, and that thinking makes the loneliness even heavier, because you stop reaching for anything different. You settle into a version of life that was only ever meant to be temporary. But here's the truth that changes everything: the fact that you've noticed this pattern means the pattern no longer owns you completely. Awareness is the first crack in the mask. The moment you can name what you're doing, you already have more power over it than you did yesterday. This is the part most people skip. They want the healing without the honesty that has to come first. But you can't rebuild something real on top of a performance. At some point, you have to be willing to feel the discomfort of being seen exactly as you are, not as you've trained yourself to appear. That discomfort isn't a sign that something is going wrong. It's a sign that something real is finally happening. Growth was never supposed to feel like nothing. It was always going to feel like this, unfamiliar, a little frightening, but honest in a way the performance never was. You don't have to tear the mask off all at once. You just have to stop reinforcing it every single day. One honest moment. One real conversation. One time you let someone see you struggle instead of smiling through it, that's where the real version of you starts breathing again. So here you are. You've read this far, felt something tighten in your chest more than once, maybe even recognized yourself in ways you didn't expect to. That recognition is not a coincidence. It's your own truth finally getting loud enough to hear over everything you've used to drown it out. You don't need to have it all figured out today. You don't need a perfect plan to undo years of learned silence. You just need one small act of honesty, with yourself first, before anyone else. That's where every real change actually begins, quietly, without an audience. Imagine what it would feel like to stop performing calm and actually feel it instead. Not the hollow, exhausted version you've gotten used to, but real peace, the kind that doesn't need to be maintained because it isn't fake. That version of you is still there, waiting underneath everything you built to survive. You were never broken for adapting the way you did. You were protecting yourself with what you had. But you're not that same person anymore, and you don't have to keep living like you are. The strength that helped you hide is the same strength that can help you finally stop. So today, let this be the moment you stop asking, "Am I fine?" and start asking, "Am I honest?" Let one person see you without the mask. Let yourself feel something without immediately smoothing it over. That single choice, repeated enough times, is how peace stops being a performance. If this video reached something in you today, don't let it end here. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, so the next message finds you when you need it most. And remember, you were never meant to just survive quietly. You were meant to actually live.